everybody, and I'd just like to say thank you very much for coming this evening. It's really nice to see some familiar faces in the crowd. So as I kind of briefly mentioned as we were chatting just now, Richard III is currently reburied in Leicester Cathedral, and I've been really lucky to visit his tomb twice now, which has been a really, really moving experience for me. It's kind of both times have been the culmination of, 5-6 years kind of fascination with this medieval monarch. And doing that and studying so much about him and kind of living with him in an intellectual way is what's really behind A King's Bones. And I'm going to start off by reading the first poem in my little perfect bound book, which is aptly called A King's Bones. So hope you enjoy. A King's Bones. The earth is full of breath and silent prisoners. The clay and the worm, the sigh of the seasons, do not make a restful place for a king's bones. I have seen the earth build a palace above my body in the image of splendor, crusty diamonds, soiled silk, the remnants of so many little lives lived lonely. I have slept too long in this darkest womb. The noises of men begin again for me, the taper and scrape into toiling and triumph. Hands less clumsy liberate the lime, acid sand, and at last my limbs. There is the touch of the fresh air and the empty sky, the human face with coloured eyes and mournful mouth. Human flesh pressed to human bone, tenderness to this broken form, the linger of a fingertip. I was tossed naked to humiliation and despair, only to be lifted like a lover. Somebody is weeping. The bones, the relics of a life destroyed by hand and word, afterwards in the mouths of men and children. What is a bone to you, with your trembling touch? Will you hear the story from he who saw it all? So that's the first poem in the book, and I think writing that poem really kind of just awoke Richard's voice in me. And what I really wanted to do with this collection was give this man a voice, a man who'd been kind of crushed under propaganda, under lies, essentially, as we know now, for hundreds of years. And this was a man who lived in a great deal of pain for most of his life. He probably had advanced adolescent onset scoliosis, which is a condition which develops in your teenage years. He would almost certainly dealt with pain on a daily basis, and yet this man spent his life fighting. He spent his life with his family, and I wanted this man to have a voice. And so now I'm going to read Skeleton, which comes a little later in the book. Skeleton. This skeleton has become its own punishment, its own malformed nightmare and disappointment. To be born whole, to see myself crumble, child body into adult, life becoming terminal. As plants curl away towards light from darkness, I began to curve in upon myself, to hide. I have felt pain in all its forms, the ache in the thrum of my own heartbeat, an invisible haunting, a ghost in my own form. Is this a God-given gift? A mark of difference? These bones have known more than yours. The creak and shudder of an inner darkness, shrinking my rib cage, crunching vertebra. As my body changed so young, I changed too. Is there a burden so heavy as that of difference? Knowing that there is so much to hide, in death our flaws exaggerate themselves. Our deformities deform themselves, bones in knots, tied into new stories. The spine becomes a snake, the man becomes a demon in his death. Pain changes everything. And yeah, I think having Richard kind of intellectually in my life has done so much for me. It's been, this book has been an outlet for so much of my own pain and my own, you know, coming to terms with my body and my life as a disabled person. But I'm just genuinely fascinated with Richard as well and his life and the Wars of the Roses, which were an incredible ongoing conflict between a family and a huge family. All of these people who fought each other were related. And it was a war which, for once, mainly impacted the aristocracy and wiped out families, sons. And I feel very privileged to have the opportunity to kind of learn about all of this through the Richard III Society, which is an incredible group. And I really encourage anyone who's interested in Richard to check them out, check out their website. There's a wealth of information there. And now I'm going to read No Roses, which kind of encapsulates some of my interest in the Wars of the Roses and imagines how Richard might have thought about it himself. No Roses. Some call it the Cousins' War. I think an apter name, for there were no roses. We crushed flowers beneath our battalion's boots. Though there were thorns, thorns in the thousands, I still feel them, piercing parts of me that should no longer hurt. To be a king is brutal. To be his sword and loyal brother is beyond brutality. I loved my family. I kept my family close. Even brothers might kill one another if clouds pass beneath the moon. Loyalty is all that bound me. I kept it locked within my heart. I craved my brother's love, for I never had a father, but a head upon a spike. In our blood, we share our name, but it is not enough. White roses cannot stay that way when blood is spilled and stained. Thank you. It was a brutal time to be alive, the medieval period, whether you were a peasant working the fields or a king. Richard himself fought his first battle at the age of 17. He was then given command of men and expected to lead them, which he did with huge success throughout his life, despite his extreme disability, which it is incomprehensible to me how he was able to do what he did. He had specially made armor, which allowed him to fight because he was physically unable to wear the usual kind of armor. He fought on horseback because the weight of his armor would have been too much for him to bear. And he was an extremely able military commander throughout his life and was trusted deeply by his brother, Edward IV. And I think, despite the fact that he was a deeply pious man, I think he took pride in his abilities as a military commander and the fact that he was able to do so much for his brother, the king. And I'm now going to read Battle, which discusses some of these themes. Battle. The body writhes beneath me, hot flesh and spittle, eyes white and curving in upon themselves. A scream caresses me, not horse or man. These creatures are living pain, no longer things of flesh, bone and sinew crushed against the mud with blood. I am a metal cage. No deformity in this visored God. Power is my name, and my words are soaked, stiffened with another man's gore or his widow's tears. How far away it feels to be a man of flesh. For these bones remember every slice and spurt, every sodden field and fear. I loved the moments, 100 men before my sword, dripping fealty. Many bones I felled upon the earth, scattered, sown to be reaped with my own soul and made anew. Every skull is the same beneath the skin, but I know these bones are unmistakable, marked apart. I felt no fear astride the horse, no fear in the mud. I saw across the field the power of the splendid sun, my brother's crown, an altar for my prayers. God save my king, who I serve with the blood I shed. We see our battles young, lanky children, too pale. I see my own brown eyes trapped in the dark, spine twisting with every inch, arms outstretched. I do not know how many men I killed. The bones become accustomed to the task, to sever lives with twitch or kick, to kill. I fought for my half in molten metal shapes, warped to kiss my spine, armor for no other, but perfect for myself. It was for my life I fought, killed and maimed for the sake of my own soul, and the battle crown they placed upon my head, the crown I wore to match the armor of my skin. So yeah, apart from the facts that we have about Richard, which are surprisingly numerous, we know that he owned at least 5 books, which was very impressive at the time. He was a deeply pious man. He had a great regard for family loyalty, and he was very interested in justice and the law. And as briefly as king, much of what he did was to improve the English justice system, which we actually still feel today in some ways. He was the first king to write down common laws in English so that English people could understand their own laws. Apart from those facts that we have plainly before us, there have been propaganda stories. Some people might believe them to be facts, you know, that's, that's their choice. And the next poem I'm going to read, before I actually hand over to Lauren, is Crippled King, and I imagined here what Richard might feel about his legacy, the stories we hear about him. So this is Crippled King. You think I do not know the stories, but even here, among the worms and the blinded beetles, I can hear my name. Even here, I hear the words, tossed like some forgotten trash, taunting, child killer, hunchback, usurper, wicked uncle of a fairy tale, man of greed and vice. I know the words of old. The victor writes the tale. I am not bitter. I would have done the same. I can only pull the bones of my crooked back into my mind, hold them there and know my truth. I was no monster. I was a man of pain. My bones, like waves of ocean, writhed in blood. The mark of murder lies not in the face or bones, but in the heart. Getting back into it, I'm going to read Birth, which is a poem which kind of considers family legacy, Richard's inheritance from his father, which was not necessarily an easy one to bear. Richard of York, his father, died fighting for his own claim to the throne. So this is Birth. When the sun sets behind a rain cloud, the sky is brown, streaked, sodden with possibilities, and I am born. I have my father's eyes, two dark forestfuls. I have his smallness in the face of the sighing world. I am the last of my brothers. My birth is a sunset. They give me my father's name to carry through it all. Even the R carved into time's tombstone is invisible. I am born to a world shrouded in that dark rain of a cousin's war. Pain a generation wide. The sun cannot shine, but it already has a name. In my childhood, I watched my father's death, played across my mind from day to day, his face, which is my face, rotting for the birds. I do not miss him. I have never known him. Though his death is the day I realize I do not want to die. I have traveled the seas already, fumbled in foreign lands for a way back to family. There is my brother, standing in the sun. His eyes are gold already. His hands are stained already. The cloud passes away in the morning. I am a dead man's son and the brother of a king. Yeah, so partly I also wrote that one in response to some of the myth making, shall we say, that came out of the Tudor era about Richard III's birth and how he was born with teeth and, you know, spent 3 years in his mother's womb and lovely stuff. So that was kind of a shout back against that kind of myth making. So the next one I'm going to read also is about Richard's family. It's about his children. He had 3 children that we know of. He had one legitimate son who tragically died as a kind of teenager before Richard himself died. He had 2 illegitimate children prior to his marriage, and I spent a lot of time kind of imagining them and their relationship with their father and his thoughts on them as well. So this is A Father's Tears. The bones of my children lie far away. One died a child of sickness, not of sword. My son, his hair a glimmer in my memory, his wrists slim and fingers grasping staff and ring. Joy soared in me to see him stand so tall, laid low too soon by God's hand. I am pleased that he never saw his father's body crushed and lost. My second son, my natural child, did you pray to see my face again? Bastard child, made in warmth and raised in love, never destined for power or for crown. My daughter in the fenlands, girl with the white hands, a white heart springs across the land, I see with your eyes. Do you survive your father's decay? Do not believe that I have no heart. Even now, this pile of bones throbs for his children beneath the ground. Your father's sins are not your own. I hope you know. If your bones are aching in the earth for answers, I have loved my line with the love of lions, prowling to protect their brood. To know a child is man's greatest battle. To watch them grow, survive, or succumb to cruelty. If I could weep, it is for you I would shed my tears, my greatest victories. And so we come back to the car park and Richard's bones, which were eventually discovered in 2012 by a team of archaeologists after much planning and work. If you know the story of the discovery of Richard's bones, you'll know that it was just incredible. There are books and documentaries out there that I recommend watching if you're not familiar with the whole thing, because it was just an incredible story. They found him almost immediately upon scraping the first scrape of earth up, and it's really something. It was like he wanted to be found, which kind of brought me to this poem, King of the Car Park, which I really felt got into his voice. So yeah, I'm going to read that one for you now. King of the Car Park. Something glimmers on the surface of the earth, half whisper in the darkness, brought to light by the glow of a flickering lamp head. Paper on the wind, and words too. Smoking kills. Someone's open lungs blanketed in ash, thrown aside and lost in an open grave of trash. This is who I might have been, some night walker, hooded haunter of the car park, bleeding tar. What a grace to be dead, my bones at rest, my mind tracing the streets of my memory. The journey from crisp packet to crown, not as far as I had imagined, for there is glitter in the earth, more gems beneath my vertebrae than ever wrap themselves around my neck in life. I lie in the shadow of the constant cathedral. Time whirls its image day by day, the steeple where the falcons make their nest each spring, the snow in its drifts on every buttress. We do not choose our graves. Even kings can only make their beds on earthen pillows. Cars drag across my mind. All human life makes a highway of my bones, and I do not mind. I have watched each layer of earth build above until the music is muted, the mouths muffled. This place no longer holy, and yet not quite whole. This graveyard, this holding place of bones. I make my raiments from the cloying earth. I make my peace in between the pieces. And so I'm going to read one more, which is King of the Car Park 2. And it's a kind of a conclusion, perhaps, a wrapping up of my poetic relationship with Richard. And what I really found from this collection is it's helped me come to terms with things that I wouldn't have been able to say in writing about myself or my own body. I wrote this for me, as well as for Richard, and I'm grateful to him for sharing the limelight with me, because I know that I've crept in here in places, and yeah, I'm just really pleased to see my poems in a little book that I can share with other people. So Janice is holding up a copy. I will also, there we go, my copy. So this is King of the Car Park 2, and here we go. Sometimes I begin to drift away. You may see the way my thoughts begin to fracture. My lines forget to hold. Shields no longer rise. I dream of some far-off moment, flesh pressed against these bones like tears. I dream of being found and losing all my losses. No longer the car park's king, but some other, gentler monarch, entombed in somber stone, cleansed and made anew. Might they weep to see my coffin in the streets, passing crowds who cheer and wave my white banner once more? A far-off dream, perhaps, the fantasy of a longing mind. Another day begins. The cars arrive above. The litter swirls in regiments. A parking attendant stands guard over my sleeping place. Far below I lie, an acorn curled in peacetime. I am content to tell my tale over and over to the clay-like earth, to my bones, to you.